Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight, if you're listening, you've actually been seduced by the title, by me, and guess what? The seduction is all by your choice. You actually chose to be seduced by me to listen to this. So thank you for allowing me to seduce you into this show. And if you heard that just now and you're like, what? No way. I'm not going to let anybody seduce me. I'm powerful and nobody can make me do anything. I'm here to tell you that if you're being seduced, it's by your choice, always, no matter. Unless you've been somehow medicated, and that's a whole other story. So we're talking about seduction tonight. We're talking about the value of it. What can it give us? What can it give us in our lives to be a seductress or seductor, or to be seduced? What can we gain from this? Because all these things that exist on the planet, they're all here for us to utilize. So can we look at them in ways that will possibly benefit us? What are some benefits of seduction? So we're going to check all those things out today. I hope that excites you. So what is seduction and what is the value of it? So if you were looking online and you saw the description of the show, you'll see that it says something to the effect of seduction often gets a bad rep. Well, seduction does often get a bad rep, and we will talk a little bit about some of the different mythological perspectives on seduction. We're going to look at, I actually grabbed a quote from the Bible, people, and that's a first for the Pleasure Zone. I have an actual quote from the Bible, from the Old Testament. I'll be sharing that with you. Although in the research I was doing, there are so many quotes in the Bible regarding seduction. Whether it's New Testament, Old Testament, it's irrelevant. They're everywhere, 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 everywhere. And we're going with Old Testament today because it's in the book of Genesis. And we'll be talking a little bit about that original sin that also is a story of seduction and what the value of it is. And then we're also going to be looking at a few other things like how to seduce. If you're like, well, I've never seduced anybody in my life and I don't think I can seduce, you're talking to a person right now, or you're listening to a person right now that in my life I never would have considered myself a seductress. And I'm only finding out through other people that, in fact, I seduce people. Fascinating. And the fact that you listen to this show is a good indicator that, in fact, I have a capacity to seduce. So we'll play with that. What is it? Do you have to look like a movie star to seduce? Do you have to have a certain body type? Do you have to speak a certain way, act a certain way? Not so much. Seduction is from your energy. And how do we allow ourselves to be the energy of seduction? What if it's way easier than you've ever considered? So we'll play with that for sure. And the other question is what if you actually would really like to be seduced? Maybe there's something out there in the world that you would love to be seduced into. Why? Because seduction to that would mean that you are being invited into something. So you could just expand your thoughts on what would you love to be seduced into? Would you love to be seduced into an orgy? Would you love to be seduced into, I don't know, using ayahuasca? Would you love to be seduced into eating grape cakes? What would you like to be seduced into? All of those qualify as seduction. So we will explore all those little avenues of seduction on this show too. And this is your first time listening and you're wondering, who is this woman and why is she talking about stuff and what's her qualification? So one of my qualifications is that I am a sex and intimacy coach. I love discussing with people how to have a more enjoyable, more pleasurable relationship with themselves and with others. And that's part of what my sex and intimacy coaching is all about. I also work with people for their health, and I do it in weird and mysterious ways. I use different types of instruments to facilitate healing in bodies through frequencies. And I also, and information, and I also do body work, movement work, and energy work. So I've been at this stuff. I've been studying and doing all kinds of things literally since I was a child. But publicly since my 20s. So for over 25 years, now, I've actually had a practice, sideline practice where I've been doing healing work. So yes, I was actually in university when I started that. So yes, it's been a few years. And it just grows and grows, and I keep adding to it. And you know what's funny about that is that what I add to my life is things that I've felt seduced into. I'm attracted to them. So what does that mean to be seduced? It means you're attracted to it. Somewhere your body gets turned on and it feels like, that's yummy. I want some of that. That feels delicious and inviting. Yeah, so that's a little bit of what we'll be talking about today. Like, what makes you feel like everything is delicious and inviting? And again, like I said earlier, it could be food, it could be movement, it could be a person, it could be thoughts, it could be art. There are a lot of things that can seduce us. And those things that when you look at them and you're like, wow, I love that. It's $32,000 for that necklace. That necklace seduced you. It did. Because even so-called inanimate objects have qualities of energy about them that can pull you in. And that pull is the seduction. So that's what we're going to be playing with, is like, how do you do that? If you've never felt in your life like you were able to actually pull things to your life, attraction, you know, people talk about the law of attraction. I would revise that to the art of seduction, that you are seducing everything into your life, whether it's lovers or money or business, you name it. It is the art of seduction, and there's value in seduction. So I'm so excited to be experiencing this show with you. And I say this is an experience because this for me is like really tapping into what do I know about seduction that I can share with you. And I would love to hear from you too, if you've had experiences in your life where you're like, yeah, I did this and I totally seduced myself into having a brand new vehicle. The thing is, when you kind of give up on what you think you can seduce, or you give up the idea that somebody is a better seductress than you are, once you give up these points of view about like who's a better one, or this is the only things you can seduce into your life, once you give that stuff up, it makes a lot of room for a hell of a lot more stuff to show up. And it can be so much more fun. So are you in the seduction, being the seductress? There's an energy of requiring to be in total allowance of people worshiping you. So if you've never seduced in your life, my question to you is, are you willing to be worshiped? Worship like the god or goddess that you are. Are you willing to be that? So that might hit some of you in a really weird way, and you're like, ooh, God, no, I'm not, because there's God. And I am not willing to step on God's toes. So no, I'm not going to be the goddess, and I'm not going to be the God that I truly am. No, that's wrong and it's bad. Well, okay, that's one point of view. So if that's true for you, and that is something that you hold close to your heart as being your truth, this show's probably not for you. But if you're open to the concept and the idea that you could be worshipped, this show's for you. Not only is this show for you, I hope it's an invitation for your life to get way better than you ever imagined, for your life to, after this show and utilizing some of the tools, I hope that what you start to have is a sense of confidence that you can walk with, and a sense of ease of being, and a sense of receiving that's just freaking massive, so that you really get like, wow, I'm not only am I a human being that is an infinite being, okay, that's nice, but I'm a valuable being, and I'm a seductress, and I can receive. And like, there's something about our bodies that is involved in this too. So I talk about the energy of seduction, but our bodies are what actually demonstrate the energy, right? So how do we utilize our bodies for seduction? How do we utilize our energy as it moves through our bodies for seduction? And it's not always what you think it is. You don't have to have mad skills at pole dancing, although that is and can be incredibly seductive. That's not the only way. So there are so many ways to seduce through movement. And sometimes they're quirky and funny and silly. And sometimes that is you fully showing up present. And that's what's attractive. And that's what the seduction is. So I find that energy incredibly exciting, even as I'm talking about it now. Like, I feel my body just warms up to feeling how happy it makes me to be my quirky self, to be a flirt, to be silly, to be funny, to be present with all of that. And that too, I also have the capacity to move like a sexy beast. I've done a lot of dancing in my life, a lot of movement work. And yeah, if I want to get down and get grinding and have my hips move like a Latina, oh, I can do that if I would like to as well. So whatever it is that you think you're not, it's wherever you're holding yourself back. And if you're like, I can't dance like a beautiful Latina and do the salsa because I'm not Latina, well, I invite you to tap into the energy of what you're refusing with that. You know, if you're like, oh, I cannot be that energy because, you know, that's like cultural appropriation. It's not really. It's really tapping into some beauty that you see and asking your body to show you what it's like to move in that way that you see as beautiful and that you see as attractive. So how do you be a seductress? How do you tap into being that which you would call seduction? First of all, what seduces you? What are you drawn to? What is it that when you see it or feel it or think of it has you so turned on that your body is like 5 degrees hotter, your genitals are warming up and arousing themselves, you are feeling alive, and your brain is like excited for pleasure? Those are the things we're talking about. Those are the things that when you know what they are, you can start to ask to be them. Because the truth is, you are all of that anyway. And all it takes is to start to invite yourself into stepping into that and leaning into those energies so much more. And so, what does that mean, leaning into it? I know it's such a confusing thought. People talk about this leaning in stuff. Leaning in is different than leaning back and stepping away. So, leaning in is like, if you're like, oh, it's really uncomfortable moving my hips and swaying them back and forth. Oh, that's really uncomfortable. Leaning in would be choosing it, doing it, even if it's privately, and then closing your eyes, sensing your body, and allowing movement to show up and not judge yourself. That would be leaning in. A little more leaning in would be to actually just see how your body moves without even anticipating or setting up a time like we gotta do seduction now. Although sometimes in the beginning, having a little time set aside to practice it is cool too. If though you're ready for some total spontaneity, which a lot of people find very attractive as well, just start that movement and see how it goes. I actually saw this video on Instagram today. The cutest thing was a little girl who I like babies of Instagram. They're so funny. So I was following one of the babies of Instagram, and she was about 2. And there's this great music from South America on. And this little babe stops the music. So she's walking down the road and the music starts. She puts her hand on her head and one on her hip, and she starts swaying. And she has this amazing rhythmic movement, and her whole body is like undulating. And it was so, I must have watched it 25 times. I absolutely loved her movement. And I was like, oh, body, I'll have that, because that is absolutely beautiful. There was such spontaneity, such beauty, such playfulness. Now that is beautiful. Now let's translate that into adult bodies. If we could just like be what those babies are being, they're just amazing with their crazy little moves, and they're so cute. So that is another example. Like if I see babies who are extra freaking cute, I'm like, wow, what is it about those babies? I'll have that energy too. Yeah, it sounds, I'm sure some of you are out there listening going, well, that's sick. Well, actually, we were all babies at one point. And sometimes we forget how cute we were as babies. So tap into that energy and remember how cute you were as a baby and admire yourself, because you probably attracted a lot of people then. And then somewhere along the way, you started judging yourself or felt like other people judging you. So you turned the tap of adoration off and you turned the seduction off. So we're going to be talking more about seduction. We're going to bring it up to the adult level now. We're going to talk about how do we be that? What can we choose for that? A little bit of, again, the history we'll talk about. So I'd like you to stay tuned in and turned on as we head to this next commercial break. We'll be right back.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight we're talking about seduction, the value of seduction. And before we jump back into that topic, I want to remind you that we have an app. That's right. We on Inspired Choices Network have an app. So the team of Inspired Choices has worked diligently, very hard, not hardly, they have worked hard for quite a while to get the app to the satisfaction of what was needed for this platform. So if you'd like to have it, you can get it. It's free. You can download it in Apple or Android app to listen. And you can also check us out through that app right now. So this is May 10th of 2021, and Inspired Choices Network actually has we have a contest going on. You have only 2 days left to get into the contest. So if you download the app and you send in a picture, you can check out the contest rules on inspiredchoicesnetwork.com and go to click on the contest link on the contest page, and you can find all the rules of how to get in on this. You can win different things. There are prizes that are over $1,000 in value. So definitely get into this contest. There's only like 48 hours left to do that. And also, if this contest is over by the time you listen to this, please go download our app. You can take us anywhere you want to go. And also you can listen a lot easier. For example, like if you're driving and you want to listen to us, it's a lot easier to listen on the app. Plus you can join in the chat room, have conversations, and we'd love to hear calls. So any show you're listening to on here, we have so many different shows, so many different topics. This station is not just about sex, although wouldn't it be so fun to have like an entire substation to this station on this network that was all about sex? I'd love that. If you love talking about sex too and would love to have a show on this station that puts you out to over 220 platforms, contact the network. So we'd love to know, and we'd love to have you join our team because it's fun, and we're always open to having new hosts. So that's an option. I think it's a great option right now, actually, because there's so many different ways of connecting with people on the planet, and having a podcast for me has been an amazing way to connect with people all around the world, and then to invite my friends to connect with people around the world. So I just love it. Speaking of friends, next week I have a friend of mine coming on the show. His name is Alan. He has been on the show, but it was years ago. He actually used to have a show of his own on the network. So I'm excited to have a conversation with him. Who knows where that will go? Alan is very sexy in his own right. He has his own way about sexiness, and he's very bold. And he's all about empowering people to just show up and be unapologetically themselves. So I hope you'll enjoy that show. He's a hoot, and he's going to try and maintain his cool, because sometimes he can swear a lot. So maybe next show he won't do that. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited to have Alan on for next week. So remember to get our app. We're just excited to have it. And you know what would be so fun is if we could look on our app stats in the next month and see that we have 10,000 people who have downloaded our app. And that would just, if you guys want to gift me pleasure, do that. Go tell everybody you know, download the ICN app. That would be a great, great thing to do. Mother's Day was yesterday. If you want to gift me from the motherhood perspective, just go tell everybody you know. Download that app. What have you got to lose? There's so many shows on here, over 6,000 podcasts that you can listen to, and about over 330 of them are mine. So how fun is that? I am so excited to be able to share this app with you guys, because I remember talking about it years ago, and so it's been a long time in the making. It's very exciting to have it alive. And that was a fun one too. And I hope our app seduces you into choosing more listening with us on Inspired Choices Network as well. So what are we talking about today? This seduction stuff, like why would people do this? What's happening, right? It's very fun to me to be in the energy of seduction. There's something for me that has my body get so excited to know that I am being a seductress. Well, why? Like, why would that turn me on, right? So part of why that is such a turn on is because if you're being seduced by me, that means you're attracted to me. And if you're attracted to me, that means there's something I'm offering you that you see as valuable. And who on this planet does not want to be seen as valuable? Whether it's that you see me as valuable because you want to spank me, or whether you see me as valuable because you want me to give you a blowjob, or whether you see me as valuable because I have fun and great information, or you see me as valuable because you look at my face and you're like, oh, I like her face, whatever it is. Thank you. I love that. And I love that I can be the energy that has you feel seduced. Isn't it kind of fun to feel seduced? I feel too that when I feel seduced by somebody, that I'm like, oh, that person's really like into me because they want to seduce me. And there are some subtle ways, as I'm thinking about it, I'm like blushing, but there are some subtle ways that I've been seduced that I find incredibly attractive. And some of them can be as subtle as like a very subtle message that's just like, I won't even tell you because I want you guys to be like creative about your own messaging, but there are words that can be seductive. There are actions that can be seductive. There are energies that can be seductive. So what is it that has you feel drawn towards somebody? So guys and gals out there, when you say yes to dating somebody, what has you attracted to them? What have they seduced you into? Is it their profile on Tinder that you're seduced by? It says that they're 6 feet tall, they weigh 180 pounds, they work out, they own 3 businesses, they have a dog, 3 children that are all grown up, and they have some kind of jet. Is that, and you're like, oh, that's attractive. Could be their stuff. One of the things to note about this whole seduction thing is we tend to be seduced by the things that are actually our love language. So if you're not familiar with the love languages, check out Gary Chapman's book on the 5 love languages. But what I've kind of noticed and observed is that if you're attracted to somebody or something, it's because they in some way are fulfilling one of your love languages. So if they do have the car, the boat, the house, the money, and your love language is gifts, you might look at that and go, oh, they can afford gifts, the gifts of the quality that you want, you know? So there is something to that, although sometimes for people for gifts, they just, you know, wildflowers are good enough. So they might be seduced by somebody who has a field with wildflowers. So think about that. When you're being seduced, and you know you're being seduced, a lot of us don't even know when we're being seduced, but when you're being seduced, what is it? What are those qualities of the person that has you feel so attracted to them? And that's the seduction. I bet you they're fulfilling one of your love languages, whatever that happens to be. So one of my primary love languages is touch. So for me, seduction often includes touch. If somebody touches me and my body lights up, even if they touch my shoulder, which doesn't happen now in COVID because of, you know, 6-foot restrictions, but remember back in the day when you could like bump people in the grocery store and people wouldn't give you the evil eye like you were killing them? Remember those days? Those were sweet and those were sexy. And those were kind of seductive for me because I could be in the grocery store and somebody could rub my arm and my body would just light up. And I was like, whew. And you know what? It could be like a 90-year-old man. And I know people are like, what? You're into grandpas? Doesn't matter. It's the touch. It's the energy of the person. And yeah, they could brush by and my body would light up. So if you're open and willing to be seduced, you're going to find all kinds of things you're attracted to. And if you're open and willing to be a seductor or a seductress, you're going to find all kinds of things being attracted to you. So if you're finding there's like lack in your life right now, like you're not receiving people or you're not receiving business or all these kind of things, start with a question like, am I the seductress that I can truly be? Like, am I tapping into that? Maybe you're not. Like maybe there's a way more that you can seduce people into, and maybe there's way more that you can be willing to be seduced into. It does go both ways. So I'm willing to be seduced fully, completely. I think yes, I am married. And yes, my husband actually seduces me all the time with the weirdest things. He probably doesn't even know he's doing it. The other day, he's like building something for us, which I find incredibly sexy. And he was showing me something in this thing that he's building. And he was like covered in sawdust. I don't know what that was, but I was like, man, that's sexy. And even though we were like, I don't know why we were standing 10 feet apart. I think we got used to like COVID restrictions. So we were like outside standing 10 feet apart. But there was this like incredible intensity between us, which was really funny. And I could feel him feeling it. And I watched this because I knew that this topic was today about seduction. And so I just stood and I looked at him as he talked. And the only thing that was running through my head is, oh my God, you are so adorable and sexy. I could just like do you right now. And even as I think about it, my cheeks are like getting hot and I'm getting sweaty. And I'm like, I'm getting like all flushed. as he's telling me about this thing that he's building, and he was actually telling me about building a septic tank, which is so not a sexy topic, but I was like, oh, he's so sexy. He's like looking after us, and he's like building a septic tank, and oh my God, that's so hot. And I think I looked at him in such a way that I was like, I could eat you alive right now, because whatever it was magnetically pulled him from 10 feet across the room, closer and closer and closer and closer, until he just like felt compelled to hug me, even though he's not like huge on hugs all the time, but for some reason that day I seduced my husband in, and he was like right in there. So that was very cute. And it was such a fun example to see how you can seduce people even that you already know, and how you can do it with thoughts, but you can also do it energetically just by appreciation. I fully appreciate him, and I have so much gratitude that it's like oozing out that he's attracted to me because I'm grateful for him. Gratitude is one of the sexiest things going, people. So if you are having some kind of icky-ish going on in your relationships, if you really cannot find something that you're grateful for about the person you're with, you really need to renegotiate that relationship. But if you can find even one thing, you've got hope. So find that thing. And I'm not saying I've only got one thing. I've got like a gazillion things I'm grateful for. So it's beautiful. And anybody who's in my life in a relationship with me, you better believe I'm grateful for them. Whether, chances are I'm not having sex with them, but I'm still grateful for them. So they can still, as human beings, be seduced, and it does not equate to sex. Oh my God, how does seduction not mean sex? Seduction does not have to equal sex. Seduction is actually attraction. But let's talk about what other people say that's about. And we'll talk about that after the next commercial. So you're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network. And we're going to get into some etymology and history after this next commercial break.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program
Welcome back, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. Did you just hear that voice that was on that commercial for the app? That's Bill Myers. If you haven't listened to his show, go check him out. He's got a show on this network as well. And lovely voice, right? Like, who doesn't want to listen to Bill Myers' voice? It's beautiful. That is seduction, my friends. So you might hear voices, you might hear intonations, you might see food. And I keep mentioning food because I am highly seduced by food. A friend of mine and we share this like love of Dobosh-tort, and I swear we can equally be seduced by Dobosh-tort, and so we have an ongoing Dobosh-tort thing with each other, and for the torta. So it's good cake. So I think about that cake and I feel seduced, and pretty much if somebody offers it to me, I can't even like restrain myself. I could have just eaten 5 watermelons and somebody puts a dobosh torta in my face. I am so on it. It's silly. So good. And just thinking about it turns my body on. That's seduction. Can you imagine? Just my imagination can turn me on and seduce. Because ultimately it comes to you and your brain, your choice, your free will. That's ultimately seduction. Everything you are seduced into is your free will. You know, you could be like, she made me do it. You can't make you do anything. Unless we have consensual consent and you're paying me for that and we have an agreement and an arrangement. But even then, guess what that is? Free will. Consensual consent's free will. So I cannot seduce you into anything. But if I have seduced you, you're welcome. If I've seduced you into greatness, you're welcome. If I've seduced you into choosing greater for you, you're welcome. If I've seduced you into going to masturbate, you are so welcome. And if you've seduced me into the same, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So it's a wonderful thing, seduction, and it goes both ways. And being willing to be seduced by somebody is such a great gift for the seducer. So, for example, if I seduce you and you agree to it, what a great gift for me that I get to gift you seduction and you say yes. Oh, what a turn on. It's beautiful. And if you get to seduce me and I say yes, like what a turn on for you. It's all about gifting and receiving, people. This is all seduction is, and it's such a beautiful thing. So why did we make it so wrong? Well, let's tap into Genesis for a minute, because that's where we're going to go to try and start to make ourselves look at this from a historically interesting sociological perspective, religious perspectives on this. I don't have a lot of religious perspectives. I'd like to honor the fact that I am not familiar with all religions in the world. I'm familiar with them, but I don't have enough experience to speak on their behalf. I was raised in a Serbian Orthodox home. Primarily, that's the religion that I followed. So all I can do is speak from the experience that I have, which is the Old Testament. So Genesis 3, chapter 3, verses 1 through 24. We are talking about who? Adam and Eve. Not Adam and Steve, and not Adam and Lilith. Oh, my sweet Lilith, where did you go? We're just going to go with the revision edition that most of you guys are aware of, which is Adam and Eve. So here's the story. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, did God actually say, you shall not eat any of any of the tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So there's seduction right there. The serpent seducing Eve. Isn't that interesting? So the serpent actually seduced Eve into choosing her greatness. But it was the downfall of man. What if he actually seduced her into her greatness to have the experience on this planet that we now call embodiment and life and the way that we live now? And yes, maybe it's a little hellish, but guess what? There is still freedom of choice to be here. Every day you wake up and you haven't committed suicide, you've chosen to be here, or you didn't die from something else. You're still choosing to be here. You are choosing this existence that is maybe based on original sin. So it's not quite perfection, but, or is it? From what that quote just read was that you will be able to taste, what was the words exactly? You will be able to know, and your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So I want to know, is there something bad about that? We've made it bad, right? We hear about these things. You go to church as a kid, if you're Christian, you go to different religions. And what I do know from basic learning of religions through my education is that every religion has something to say about the different forms of seduction, whether it's, you know, a variation on the Four Noble Truths for the Buddhists, where, you know, harming something, if you chose to harm it, that's being seduced into harm. There are different ways of interpretation, I suppose. I'm not an expert, so I cannot speak on that. And then when I researched some quotes for from Islam for Muslims, there's a variety, and there's a lot of debate too on like, what is evil? What is evil is the question, because that is how seduction has been seen, as seduction has been seen as evil. Now, that is not the only quote from the Bible, but it is the first one in Genesis. And for those of you who are familiar with the Bible, those 5 first books, there's actually quite a few quotes in the Old Testament and quite a few in the New Testament. So feel free to go check them out. And they're all, if you literally just Google search seduction in the Bible, you'll find all kinds of stuff. So what I really want to look at is also how seduction has played kind of like a role historically for different things. Like if we go even further back, pre-Christianity, if we look at seduction from the perspective of the ancient Greek gods or Roman gods and goddesses, and we look at, let me just check the word on this. So in Greek, one of the goddesses is Peitho, or persuasion, and she's the goddess who personifies persuasion and seduction. Her Roman equivalent is Suada, or Suadella, and she's also presented as an important companion of Aphrodite. They both are. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, right, and fertility. And so when we look at these goddesses through history, they've existed, and they've not been harmful. They've actually been companions to love. Seduction has been a companion to love. It's required. It's actually what has us attracted to people to begin with, is the seduction energy. It's what builds and has you keep choosing a person. If they can continue to seduce you by offering you your love languages, you will likely keep choosing them. But if they cannot, then they're not seducing you. So likelihood is you're not going to keep choosing them. It's kind of simple. So when you play with kind of historically looking way back, this whole concept of seduction is very old. We're going back thousands of years. I'm sure if we look at any even older anything in any archaeological finds in Asia, or in whether it's East Asia, or we're looking at even different countries in Africa. I bet that there's way older history that hasn't been uncovered there, but for the most part, most of our historical findings and references are European right now. So that's what I'm kind of going with. But definitely there's going to be seduction, that energy of seduction through all cultures. Why? Because that is how we find mates, and that is how we procreate, and that is how we survive, right? So how do you become a seductress if you need this energy to survive and you don't feel like you're being one? How do you be a seductress to survive? Oh, like, how do you do it? So I just wrote a little article before this show because I don't know, I felt like writing a blog, and so I'm going to do a little edit on it, or pass it to a friend to edit it so that it makes sense, and then we'll be able to have that out in the next week or two. For you guys on Inspired Choices Network, there are some blog spots under there. There's a magazine, so you can check that out there. So as I kind of thought about seduction, I thought, what's required for seduction? Presence is number one. If you're not present with people, It's very hard to seduce them. If you're sitting on your phone and you're like, and you're like scrolling stuff and you're like distracted and you're not with them, how on earth do you think you're going to seduce them? Yeah, you might think you're going to send like, LOL, look at this cat video, and they're supposed to be attracted to you. That's interesting. And I suppose maybe for Gen Z that's working. I don't know. But I think there's more to it, peeps. So let's talk about what's been working throughout history. And eye contact is one. Eye contact must be effective because there are cultures that actually have people hide their eyes because they know the eyes are seductive. They are, as a lot of people say, they are the doorway to the soul, right? So that must be a seduction. I think some other seductions have to do with the way that we present ourselves in person, and smelling good helps. I know that's weird, but having scent about you that actually makes you attractive is helpful. If you smell like horse manure, you might attract other people who like the smell of horse manure, but it's more rare. But if you actually smell hygienically clean, that's pretty sexy. So eye contact, smelling good, feeling good in the clothes you wear. Doesn't really matter what you're wearing, as long as you feel good in them and your body's resonating and feeling alive and feeling like you can like strut your stuff. There is movement that you can do that is very seductive as well, in a way that you can move your body so that it appears far more sexy. And there are classes on that. And if you'd like one from me, let me know. And there are also, just to check if you've got your barriers up. If you've already judged that something's not good or it's not going to work, then you've put your barriers up. But if you're open to receive, then the chances are your seduction can start. And then let your body light up with being turned on. So if you're not turned on, I bet there's been at least 1 millisecond in your life where you were turned on, even if it was that moment where you saw a kitten and you were like, oh my God, that's the cutest thing. That was your body lighting up. Tap into that energy and let your body remember that and run that energy in your body. If you've had better, even more brighter experiences than that, you can always do some exercises where you run orgasmic energy through your body, so your body does light up and feels alive and orgasmic. That's attractive, right? Alive is attractive. And then another one that people often kind of shy away from is being and giving compliments. Like, being the energy of compliments is sometimes even more interesting than actually saying them. So compliments, as long as they are very true and they match the energy of the person they work. There's lots of times where compliments don't work because it doesn't actually match what the person is trying to convey or say, or they're using it as a manipulation, and you kind of feel the manipulation. And if you're not wanting to be manipulated by them, you won't buy it. So that's another one. And really, to be a great seductress, you need to be willing to be worshipped. I mentioned that earlier, and I know that's confusing, but are you willing to be worshipped? We're going to head, we have another commercial break, I know, what? So we're going to head to our next and last commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. just before break, I was giving you a couple of tips and tools on like, how do you seduce anyway? Well, I give you some pretty quickie ones, and those are some things to just practice. Just practice having eye contact. Like, what is it like to look at a person for more than 1, 2, 3 seconds? I actually mentioned this to my hubby the other night. We were watching Sexify on Netflix. So Sexify is a show about these graduate students in Poland, and they're making an app, sex app for their graduation project. And one of their challenges on their app was to look at somebody for 2 minutes. And my husband was like, 2 minutes? I'm like, honey, you can't even do 3 seconds without wanting to do me. And he's like, okay, I'm going to try. Like, he was up for the challenge. So 2 seconds in, he's like, I give up. I'm like, I know, it's hard. That's what happens. Presence is potent. So 3 seconds can be a turn on. You imagine what 15 seconds or 2 minutes of intense presence of looking at somebody can do. Your body can literally go into orgasm, and that is sexy, and that's a turn on, and it pulls people in. Then you can utilize that energy, walk around with it, and be it all the time, and you'll find that people are just attracted to you for no particular reason, and you don't know why. Well, you probably know why, but they don't know why, and they're just like, I don't know why I'm so attracted to you, or they don't even know why, and they start calling, and they don't even know why they're calling, which is pretty much how my entire business is run. Is people half the time call me and say, I don't know why I'm calling, but so-and-so told me to call, and it felt good, so I did. I'm like, interesting, fascinating, that's fantastic, let's do this. So are you willing to be worshipped? Are you willing to have people be curious about you? And are you willing to be curious about others as well? And are you willing to be respectful of their worship? If they're worshiping you, are you willing to honor that they see you as a goddess? It's a tough one, I have to say. I've experienced that energy, and it's an interesting one to live, to have that level of worship. And it's so uncomfortable, and at the same time, such an invitation to being empowered. And if you've never been worshipped, I invite you to find somebody who is totally into worshiping you, who would love to adore every inch of you. And the funniest thing is, usually when you're willing to do that for somebody, they so would like to do that back for you. Well, I think, but I know that's true for me. So when that energy comes my way, I definitely feel that back. And sometimes it starts with me feeling it first, and then it goes back. So it can be very mutual. So are you just willing to feel that? Like, what is it like to be so erotically turned on, alive and charged, that people are just so attracted to you, they don't know what to do with themselves? Are you willing to be the seductor, seductress? And are you willing to be seduced? It goes both ways. So you got to be willing to be both, right? And I also want to remind you that, a lot of why we have this energy of seduction is for the survival of the planet. We seduce each other to procreate. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Seduction equals potential procreation equals survival of the race. And there's a lot more fun that can be had with it, but that's essentially what it comes down to. So if you're willing to have your barriers down, to receive a lover, to be worshipped, what else can show up? Is it possible that your finances might improve? Is it possible that your health might improve? Your lovership or loverships might improve? What I know is absolutely, those things absolutely can improve. And it's just a matter of saying, yes, yeah, I'm actually willing to be worshipped. And what's that like? So if you've ever gone to a temple or anything where you've given offerings to a deity and you've prostrated yourself on the ground and you've worshipped, you'll know what that's like. It's like letting people be in servitude to you. And what if that's not a wrongness? What if it's something that absolutely is a pleasure to them to worship you? It's very much a bit of tapping into the topic from last week as well. Just letting people worship you. How fun is that? So next week we've got Alan on. I hope you stay tuned in and turned on until then.
Thank you for listening to The Pleasure Zone. with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.